we were having discussions like, there's brothers and sisters that are going through things outside of skiing. Everybody's got something that they're dealing with. I don't care what culture you're from. And Carl and I got such relief, such mental health care and physical, obviously, from just being out in the mountain. And sometimes you don't even have to go anywhere, but just being in that space gives you a sense of peace, because I feel like you have problems, but the mountains are so much bigger than your problems.
Mike Russell grew up as a sharecropper's son in Delaware before attending college and becoming an executive in the pharmaceutical industry. Then he watched the second plane hit the World Trade Center and decided he'd better follow another path. This one took him to Colorado, where he'd go on to find a family in the National Brotherhood of Skiers and develop their backcountry program, which I was lucky enough to visit at Vail last year. He's called Tele Mike for a reason, and he readily admits that it was powder and untracked terrain that first drew him to the backcountry and keeps him coming back for more. He loves the quiet and peaceful nature of the backcountry compared to the busy resorts located off Colorado's I-70. He speaks to the mental health benefits of wild places, calling the backcountry his church. In this episode, Mike shares where his nickname came from and his life's journey from being a business executive to finding a new calling in the mountains. He speaks to his efforts to make the backcountry a safer space for people of color and of his passion for introducing others to the joy of sliding on snow. Times are changing, but our mission to be the voice of the backcountry skiing and snowboarding community remains the same. Now more than ever, we have plenty of important stories to tell, conversations to have, and thoughts to share. And if you like what you hear, please support the effort. Please donate now, give us a listen, and share these episodes. And we'll work hard to keep bringing you the stories that keep us all connected. We're offering levels of support to fit everyone's budget, starting at just $10 a year. For those of you who want to go big, we're offering the following 3 premium levels. For $50, you can get a Backcountry Magazine Supporting Listener t-shirt. For $100, the Supporting Listener hoodie. And for $150, a 1-year subscription to Backcountry Magazine plus the Supporting Listener hoodie. You can learn more at backcountrymagazine.com/podcast. Thanks a lot, and thanks for listening. We'll see you in the hills. All right, friends, let's get into it. We hope you enjoy this new episode. Tele Mike Russell, welcome to the Backcountry Podcast.
Hey, Howie, my man, what's going on? Hey, man, I'm happy to be here. We're getting a little snow flow finally here in Colorado. And like Marvin Gaye, man, let's get it on. Let's talk about the backcountry.
Right on. Well, let's start with the easy question first. When and how did you get the name Tele Mike?
Hey, man, that's probably been about 20 plus years ago. So, so I'm in the National Brotherhood of Skiers, and we could talk about what that organization's all about. But, there's a lot of Mikes in that group, a lot of Mikes, especially I ski with this brother named Mike Manning, brother from Detroit all the way to Snowbird. So everyone would get us confused. So they're like, wait a minute, Mike Manning, you're on Alpines. Mike Russell, you're on Teleskis. You're on Tele Mike. So that's where it came from, man.
So what drew you to teleskiing in the first place?
Man, the backcountry. Man, when I started thinking about getting into the backcountry, what is it? Like I said, 20 some years ago, one of the main tools was teleskiing. At that time, I was alpining. So, I think at that time, the AT gear and boots weren't quite there, the technology and the weight. So I said, hey, I wanted to learn a new discipline anyway. And get into the backcountry. So I started teleskiing. That's how it happened.
What drew you to the backcountry?
Man, well, first of all, look, power, and there's an elusiveness there, right? Just because you go to the backcountry doesn't mean it's going to be powder, all the time. But I just wanted to get out of the resort, especially here in Colorado, right? You get on I-70, there's a lot of people. You get up to Breckenridge, Keystone, Vail. That's crowded, man. So I needed to make my own lane and I wanted to get out into the backcountry, and it's just so peaceful. It's also, man, it's my mental health. It is my church getting back there, man. So brother, that's why I wanted to get into the backcountry.
Do you remember like your first time going touring?
Huge. Yeah. One thing, especially like say around the pandemic, everyone, in Colorado just start jumping into the backcountry. And then a lot of people stop probably for this reason. Cause my first day in the backcountry was on Cameron Pass, northern Colorado. It was a powder day and you're feeling all great. You're like, man, I'm excited, starting to skin. And then after about, the first 500 feet of elevation gain, you're like, wait a minute, man, this is hard work.
I'm sweating.
Right. So my first experience, we got to the top. I was exhausted. And by the way, I'm on tele gear. Now I got to make tele turns, off of, Cameron Pass. And it was tough going. So after the first day, I was like, man, is this really for me? But I kept with it. I kept with it. And what I learned was, yeah, I'm a pretty decent skier. I can go to, most resorts, ski all the double black diamonds, but hiking up and then skiing down, especially making tele turns. All right, man, we got to get our weight up on our fitness. So that was my first experience, but I stuck with it.
What did you have for a tele binding at the time? What was your setup? I'm guessing it wasn't a free pivot binding at that time.
It was a G3. I don't remember the model, but I remember it was a G3.
Like a Targa, right? The Targa.
Yeah. With the cartridges. Yeah, man. Something like that. And I'm trying to remember like was it a Carhu? I think was my ski that I had, something like that. Yeah, man.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I started in the backcountry in Colorado myself and on tele gear and, gosh, it was terrible. I mean, the gear was better than AT gear, but not so great. And that Targa though was like known for being one of the easier touring tele bindings. Of course, now we have the free pivot tele bindings, which really makes all the difference efficiency wise.
Yeah, man, because it didn't have that free pivot, man. So it felt like not only were you tellying down, but you were tellying up because it still had that tension on it when you were, skinning up. So it was, it was a workout, man. It was almost like riding a fixed gear bike or something like that.
Right. So you and I met last winter at the National Brotherhood of Skiers. What do they call it? The summit?
That's right.
And it was at Vail, and we brought our base camp tour there, thanks to your invite.
No, thanks. Thank you, brother. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. Our pleasure. Our job was to do our thing, which is like, we're setting people up with touring gear. We're going on little touring clinics and doing beacon work and doing all this stuff. And going into it, here a bunch, 3 white guys driving out from Utah to go to Vail. And, we had a connection with you and Carl Terrell through Connor McNamara. So we had that connection, but we were having conversations like, how, and maybe some of this was internal as I look back on it. I kept thinking to myself, am I going to fit in? Are they going to look at me differently? Because here I am, coming to their party as a white guy. And I had all these thoughts. And as we got closer, I got to thinking like, well, this is how people of color look at skiing and always have, because it's such a white dominated sport. And that was really like, I don't know, it seems really simple as I say it, right? Like that duality. Of course, I had a blast and I was welcomed and it was beautiful. Does it surprise you to hear me say that? Or is it, as I say that, what does it make you think, I guess?
No, man. I get it. What I find sometimes funny, because you saw some of the parties and the happy hours that they would have. And I think the locals would walk in, they'd walk in to say like, what is it? Vail. We'd have a happy hour there. And the locals would walk in and you see their face. Like they'd walk in, they're looking around like, whoa, wait a minute. There's all these, black people here. Am I supposed to be here? But no, man, I would say National Brotherhood of Snow Sports, we are minority focused, but all are welcome. Minority focused, but all are welcome. We're especially starting to get into that space of, hey, make it more BIPOC. But it's always been inviting. And what we try to do is we're skiers who just happen to be Black. We were skiers who just happened to be Black. So that's the connection that we're trying to make with any culture, with any people. So I get what you're saying, but hey, man, let's get back to what this is all about. We're all skiers, snowboarders, tele skiers. So let's all connect and love and groove on that.
One of the stories that I heard at the summit was the original story about the ski club out of Detroit. This is before the National Brotherhood existed. It was just this Black ski club out of Detroit that went to Aspen, right?
Yep.
Can you share this story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it blew my mind. It really blew my mind. And this is in the early 70s, like 72 or something like that.
Yeah. It's 50. Yes. 50. This is 50 years ago. So
that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. The anniversary in Vail at the summit last year was 50 years. So absolutely. So it was Art Clay and Ben Finley who really led that trek, or it was almost kind of a coming to Mecca, in Aspen. So it was clubs like the Jim Dandies. They're from Detroit. Other clubs like here, they were called the Sippers and the Sliders, because it's all about that, having a few drinks and happy hour. But now they changed it to the Slippers and the Sliders. Four Seasons West. There's a bunch of clubs that they were kind of disparate, Black clubs, Black ski clubs in each of their cities. But one of the first and the biggest were Jim Dandy. So we all came to Aspen. So yes, Aspen 50 years ago got wind of this, and the National Guard was put on alert, if you will, because they're like, okay, who's coming? What's going to happen? Obviously it was great. I mean, they got there, they had a great time skiing, have great happy hours and things like that. But yes, at that time, the National Guard was put on alert. So we're past that now.
Yeah, no kidding. So we were there, obviously, at the 50th anniversary at Vail to do, we had this really cool backcountry venue, and it was the bottom of the race hill, which they closed right down for us. We had an uphill track. We had an uphill downhill race.
Yep.
Most of the people I interfaced with, well, I would say 75, 80% of the folks that came and tried touring gear had never done it. And we're really new to it. And you guys saw this interest. You knew it was coming. You and Carl really have worked a lot to introduce this backcountry programming into the Brotherhood summits, at least. Tell me about that story. Like, how did that come about? When did it really start picking up, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So my buddy, Carl Terrell. So Carl Terrell, he's a brother. He grew up in Colorado Springs. We were emailing today, right? He's out shooting boars or something, hunting,
Texas.
Wild. Yeah, he's in Texas hunting wild boar. So he is truly that Colorado guy. He's riding horses. He got riding snowmobiles, it all. So Carl and I met through the National Brotherhood of Skiers, because I was starting to get into the backcountry, like I said, 20 years ago. I needed a partner. I wanted someone who's Black, ideally, just to groove with them on this. So at the National Brotherhood of Skiers in Vail, I met Carl. So we started backcountry skiing together. So we would, go side country, then, we'd go to Keystone, do side country, Breckenridge, do side country. All right, let's continue this. So we got, we go to Vail Pass, go to Loveland. And then eventually we got into sled, access, skiing. And what I like to say about this progression of, we were taught backcountry by white guys, and there are people like Wiley Asher, Ole, Russ Owens, who we met, who really took us under their wing and, didn't look at race at all. Just said, hey man, you guys love the backcountry. Let's vibe on that. So we got into, sled access skiing. So especially on, Vail Pass, Jones Pass, places like that. So one day, Carl and I were out there just kind of by ourselves, just taking laps on our sleds and skiing on Vail Pass. And then we just looked at each other. We were like, you know what would be awesome if we got more people from the National Brotherhood of Skiers out here, riding with us, doing the backcountry. So we kind of started on a crusade, and we went out and tried to assemble our National Brotherhood of Skiers backcountry people, like assembled them like the Avengers. So we went out and got people like, Marcus Price, Romaine, Fanone. Some of those guys were already in the backcountry. We just said, hey, let's collaborate. Let's do this together. Let's learn together. And by the way, because a lot of times I would go in the backcountry like myself. So it was much easier to connect with these guys. And obviously we wanted to do, skin and do that part of backcountry. So there were people like, Mo Wills and another sister named Susu. So Susu is, she is a marathoner. Her bucket list is running a marathon in each state. She's up to like 37. And I was like, Sue, wait a minute. You're a skier and you're running marathons. Come on, get out here. And she was like, no. I bought a lift ticket, not a hike ticket. So anyway, I still convinced her, and she was blowing me away on the track, on the skin track, because she's a marathoner. Anyway, so we started amassing this group, within the National Brotherhood of Skiers until it started to grow. And that's really where it came from. It was our desire to introduce, people to this discipline and give them a pathway, if you will, and we would give you the introductory kind of training, especially around avalanche awareness, how to use a beacon, rescue, all of that. But then we'd say, okay, if you're now that we hooked you, all right, now go to this Area 1 class. I'll go to this Area Rescue class and then go to your Area 2. And then that's really where it came from. It was from Carl and I saying, hey man, let's get our people into this. So that's kind of where that came from.
Had you done any programming at the national? Because so just for our listeners who aren't familiar with it, the Brotherhood gets together every year at a different ski area. Last year happened to be the 50th, so it was huge. I think there were a couple thousand folks there.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
It was massive. Yep. Just took over Vail, which was it was super cool. Vail looked different, right, than it ever does otherwise, and
right,
and it felt different, and it was just a blast. Did you start this? Was this last year, the first year you had that kind of whatever we were part of, that the backcountry thing where all the we had a bunch of ski industry folks there, a bunch of different brands were there with their kit and putting it out on the hill.
Yeah. So no, that was our second year. The first year last year was Vail, our second year. Prior to that, we had already started amassing this group within the National Brotherhood of Skiers, of backcountry skiers. And so the president, Henry Rivers, came to me and said, Mike, we need you to be the director or the owner of our backcountry program, because we have people going beyond the gates. What we don't want happening is, say, like, it'd just be the worst thing, right? You're at the summit and someone has an accident or, God forbid, dies. That's kind of how it started, or my kind of ownership of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mike, you and I have been corresponding on various topics over the last year, and I'd like to read back to you something you wrote just the other day. You said, "I like to tie this cultural backcountry movement, which not many people know about, into how skiing in the backcountry brings a form of physical and mental health and well-being that may not have been known to exist to these communities in the past. Because in the past, the backcountry might not have been a safe space. So Carl and I are creating this lane and a safe space for our community." Can you kind of drill down on what you mean by safe space in that context?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, think about, unfortunately, the stereotypes. You're down in the South, things happen, say, like in the forest, in the woods. We've always been told that's not a place where you want to go, historically, because something may happen to you because of the color of your skin. I don't need to go into the details, but I think everyone kind of remembers where that comes from. So you're taught that. Therefore, again, when Carl and I we're out there on Vail Pass, we're having discussions like, there's brothers and sisters that are going through things outside of skiing. Everybody's got something that they're dealing with. I don't care what culture you're from. And Carl and I got such relief, such mental health care and physical, obviously, from just being out in the mountain. And sometimes you don't even have to go anywhere, but just being in that space gives you a sense of peace because I feel like you have problems, but the mountains are so much bigger than your problems. So that's where Carl and I said, all right, let's start bringing people out here, and we would watch them change. We'd bring people from Detroit. We'd bring people from, New York City. And those are high vibration areas. A lot of chaos is going on. And we just watch people's personalities just mellow out. And they didn't know because of economics. It's, still got to, come to these mountainous regions. It takes money. It takes effort. We wanted to show people this free healthcare that you can get by being in the backcountry. So that's really where that comes from. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I just wrote this down. The mountains are bigger than your problems. And I can't think of for anyone just a more powerful statement and a true one. And you said that. I just wrote it down. But
yeah,
but it's so true. And it has that benefit for anyone, no matter where they're from or what their background is.
Right on, brother.
Let's throw it back to your background because this is your story. I think that one of the things that the skiing community lacks is because it lacks diversity. I think a lot of us assume that everyone's story is pretty much the same. They're wrong in that assumption, and I have been myself, but how you come into a sport like skiing is pretty homogenous when you're white, I think. And your story, which I'd love you to share, is a powerful one for me. And there's certainly many people of any different race that have a powerful story as to how they came to skiing or ski touring. Would you mind sharing your story, both where you're from and how you ended up in Colorado? Share that with us, would you please?
Yeah, absolutely, my man. So look, I was born in what we call slower Delaware. So there's upper Delaware and then there's lower Delaware. So the North Delaware people, they were more towards Wilmington and Philadelphia. They would say, if you're from lower Delaware, you're from slower Delaware, which is actually officially below the Mason-Dixon line. So being born in slower Delaware down by the beaches. So my family, they come from sharecroppers. They were farmers. So they had cattle, farming, soybeans, farming peas, anything they can grow out in the fields. The land may or not belong to, the family. So we go do some sharecropping, with a family that did own that land, or we work for that other farming family for income. So that's where I come from. And my culture, especially on my mom's side, they're all a combination of African and Native Americans. So that lower Delaware area, the nation that's there is the Nanticoke Indians. So that's kind of my lineage and background. So coming up out of that farming, community, we've moved up a little bit to middle Delaware, still living in kind of country farming, community. And my dad, he worked in factories. My mom, she did housekeeping. And, we lived in a trailer, but still in that farming community to make things work, in that way. Quick story. The joke is my father, 83, he's like what we call the Amish Uber. So the Amish community, they don't drive to build their houses or drive to the grocery store. They're still on horse and buggy, but you can catch a ride with someone who has a vehicle. So my dad, he takes the Amish to their jobs. So hence we call him the Amish Uber, and he does that now. He does that today. So that's kind of where my background. So where I'm coming from, Howie, my sports, I played a lot of baseball growing up, a lot of street basketball. So that's my first soiree into athletics. But what got me into skiing, my first sense of skiing was, watching things like, the wide world of sports, watching ski racing, ski jumping. Whenever that was on, man, we had that antenna, outside, right? You had to turn it, to make sure that antenna could get the right signal so that you can watch your program. And we would watch the wide world of sports. And man, I was dialing in to watching ski racing and ski jumping. At the time, I didn't think that, I'm in the farmland. That's not something that's accessible to me, but I'm going to watch it. But it was always there. That excited me, so I was always like, I want to do that. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but someday I'm going to go ski. So life goes on. I go to college, go to undergrad, go to grad school. And I end up in Arizona, in Phoenix. And my friends at the time were like, hey, Mike, at my company, they're like, hey, let's go skiing. And I said the quintessential thing. I said, what? Black people don't ski. But then I thought about it, right? I was like, well, I remember watching, the wide world of sports, watching those people ski and ski jump. Man, let's go do that. This is your moment. So we went to Sunrise Ski Resort in Arizona, which is, by the way, on Apache land as well. And they're also integrated in running that ski resort as well. Man, and I did the thing that guys do. What do? We put on our skis, we jump on the lift, and we don't know how to ski. We don't know anything. And man, I got off the lift, fell, and I was going down what at the time was a blue, almost just missing people. I was that, that a-hole, who should have taken a lesson, but I jumped right into it. And I, of course, got to the bottom. I didn't have on the best ski clothes. I'm wet from falling all the time, but I was like, I love this. And that's where it came from. That was my first time, skiing. And ever since then, I was like, how do I spend more of my life doing this and less of the things that I don't want to do, like work?
Amen.
So yeah, that's kind of my upbringing. But then, how do I really get to Colorado? So I was following that corporate life. I was working for Merck at the time, chasing being an executive and
in the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah. So working for Merck, and I'm driving into New York City, and I every day I see that skyline and I see the World Trade Center. And I'm like, why is the World Trade Center smoking like that? I didn't know it had a smokestack. Why? But that's weird. The traffic came to a stop. Everyone got out of their cars and started looking into New York. And this is off of I-95. So looking, across the river, we have that bird's eye view. And then we see a plane, and it looks like it's maybe going to go past the World Trade Center. And no, it hit it. So I'm watching, and I'm like, whoa, wait, what's going on? And we watched the carnage, from a bird's eye view, and we're watching the World Trade Center, fall. And I was like, I was supposed to have a meeting in the World Trade Center later that night. I was supposed to take the path over and meet a friend. I only missed that by 8 hours. Hey, Mike, what the hell are you doing with your life? What do you want to do right now? And it was audible. Go ski. Go to Colorado. I know you're doing this corporate thing, but man, this pace of being on this corporate life is going to kill you. So I moved to Colorado 4 months later. I was out. And next thing got to Colorado, I needed to learn how to ski. I mean, I was a skier, but not the best. So I enrolled myself in again, this is 20 some years ago. Breckenridge had what's called the 99ers. For $99, you could get a ski school pass from Thursday through Sunday. So you could just keep coming to ski school Thursday through Sunday. So I would do that. And then I got with people, whenever I try to learn something, I like to learn from the best people possible. That's what I like to do. So I learned to ski from Matt Belleville. Matt Belleville was one of the original, let's say, he was in the extreme ski competitions, and his competitor was people like Doug Coombs. So he's, I'm learning to ski from him. And he's also, in the Crested Butte, extreme ski competitions. He's always placing like in top 15 or more. So that's one of my mentors. I'm skiing with other ski instructors like Franzi, kind of one of those, comes from the Northeast, skiing with places like Bad River Glen. But he's a lifer ski instructor at Breckenridge. People like Jen Loesch. Those are my mentors that taught me to ski. And I really wanted to dial in my skiing. So I joined the PSIA, Professional Ski Instructors of America. I will say, Howie, I'll be honest. I didn't enjoy teaching. I enjoyed learning how to ski. And then that's where we come full circle to telemark, because that's when I said, all right, I want to go into the backcountry, but you need to learn the telemark. So let's get with people like, at the time, Mike Shemp, who was, again, like an examiner level, telemark skier. And he took me under his wing and taught me, how to telemark, but through the PSIA program. So that's my story, from the woods and from the farmland, now to the mountains.
That's a beautiful story. I want to ask you if you'd share the story that you shared with me the last time we spoke about your friend who was in that corporate world with you, and you flew out to LA, and that was part of your transition as well. Would you mind sharing that? Or
yeah, man. I was at that time, working, in the pharmaceutical, industry. And a lot of that is travel. You have to go to your clients. We're flying to, the dispensaries, the automated dispensaries and things like that, setting that up. And you're on that plane, man. And your one perk is you're getting a bunch of frequent flyer, miles. Now, when I moved out to Colorado, one of the great things that my company allowed me to do, they're like, well, you know what? You travel anyway. It doesn't matter where you live. So go ahead. So then quickly after that, my friend Sue Pullen, she came out because she's like, oh, I love skiing. And that was one of my, my ace, partners, hey, are you traveling this week? No. Are you traveling? Nope. Hey, let's have a sick day or 3 and go ski. And we would just get after it. But then, she was on the same boat. She was travel, chasing that executive life until I got a call. Hey, Sue has had a heart attack in LAX in the airport. And now she's in the hospital. So of course I went to visit her, and, I see her on her bed, and I have a tie on, and she's a very small, petite young lady. And when I go reach down in her hospital bed to give her a hug, she grabs my tie and pulls me to her very closely because she can't talk very loud. And she says, you need to get off of this path of being in this corporate rat race, or you're going to end up in this bed just like me. And then let the tie go. So 9/11 happened. That was one moment of, hey, what are we doing? And then that one, to have your friend, your ski partner tell you, you're going to end up like me if you keep up on this rat race. Woo, man, that told me something. She ended up passing away because of complications, like even a couple years later. She wasn't skiing, but that was something that, again, that's a message, and you got to take that to heart. And I made changes in my life, to focus on skiing and other things, yeah.
Skiing and family. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Skiing and definitely family. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's throw it back a little bit to your Brotherhood family, because you guys have been working on this really cool project, which took you to Morocco of all places last year. Tell us about that project. When did you start doing it? Why? Like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, man. So, what I want to also say about that is it's not just me. Like, it's not like, hey, I'm not the token, black backcountry skier. There are lots of people. So like I said, there are people that have been doing it, kind of on their own. Like, there's one cat named, Eric Rea, who also raps about all things backcountry. So we started to pull together like Voltron, and we'd say, all right, and we've done the States. Hey, Fanone, he's a professor in Japan. So he's inviting us over and showing us, Niseko and all those other places in Japan. Of course, we are ducking out through the ropes. We're going down to, South America to ski, with David Owens, who owns Powder Quest. So we're going down there and doing backcountry. It was just, we started to ski all these different places, on the planet. And again, one of them is, Gulbarg, India. We're like, wait a minute, we're coming up on the fact that we've been big mountain backcountry skiing on a lot of these continents. So, we only have at the time, this time last year, we're like, we have Africa, New Zealand / Australia and Antarctica left. Man, let's go get those. Let's go get it. So it was this past March, we went out to the Atlas Mountains, in Morocco, and skied with Chris Erickson. He was our guide. And we also wanted to document this. So we're working with Sorcery Cinema. We want to tell this story of big mountain or backcountry skiing on every continent. And yes, we're skiers and snowboarders, first, and we just happen to be all African American. So we want to tell this story and say, all right, this is another form of Black excellence. This is another form of a way to live. So maybe you don't want to go, do backcountry, but maybe, I don't know, whatever it is, you want to go open a business, you want to go to college, you want to travel the world, whatever it is, we're trying to be that example of, let's not just stay in our lane culturally. Let's look outside of our, culturally, fixed, imaginary boundaries, and let's get outside of this. So that's kind of the project. So it is trying to ski big mountains on each continent. And 2024 of August, we have New Zealand. Then 2025, we have Antarctica. And after that, I think, we'll be done with the continents, but I think after that, we're going to take it to Greenland and the Arctic Circle, try to avoid the polar bears. That's kind of what that project is all about. And we're trying to film it. And we're trying to fundraise for that to get some athletes that may not have all the funds to, adequately, especially pay for Antarctica. And we're trying to raise funds also for the film as well.
I want to just make a note of something. When I was in Vail at the Brotherhood, there was this really palpable sense of pride among the folks there. And when you talk about Black excellence, and I had some conversations just like this with other participants, particularly at the disco party or whatever that huge gathering was. But there was this sense of just this extreme pride that, like, no, this is for us too. And we know what it takes to be here. It takes money. We have to have a certain level of success to be able to afford this sport and be here. And it's something that I think, the white ski community takes for granted. Not all of it, of course, but some of it. Is that a fair assessment of that? I mean, the pride that I saw there?
Yeah. We even, there's this kind of phrase, we call it Black joy, whatever it is, so for our group, Black joy is skiing. And like I said, all of us, regardless of culture, we're dealing with some demon or some problem in our life, but let's find that space of Black joy. So for us, it is skiing. And now you go to the ski resort, you go to the summit, and there's all this other Black people. Now you finding Black joy within your community. Cause look, there's definitely a lot of people in the Black communities that, that's a white sport. Maybe we're not welcomed. And we're trying to show them that, we're making a pathway. And by the way, we're kind of doing this together. And let's just be happy in this moment. It doesn't matter if you're on the bunny slope or, if you all the way through, you're doing Black Diamonds or you're going through the gates. Let's celebrate this together and have Black joy in the moment and just kind of leave all of our problems kind of where they are, for the moment. And yes, there's a sense of pride because yes, it does take money to, ski in Vail. It takes even a lot more money for the next summit, which is in Big Sky. Man, that's an expensive place. But we're going to bring the party. We're going to bring the Black joy. We're going to bring the skis. We're going to bring the outfits, man. Let's just have fun such that when we're on our deathbed, we have no regrets. I like to say I have the deathbed point of view. I don't ever want to be on my deathbed saying, I wish, I woulda, I coulda. I want to be on there saying, man, I'm exhausted. I'm ready to go.
Need a nap.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Bryce. What is his last name?
Parts.
Barnes, right? You know, when I was a kid, one of the things I understood about the Brotherhood, because they would come to my home hill here in Vermont, Smuggler's Notch, every so often. And I don't know if that was one club or a couple or the summit at the time. I was little. One of their objectives at the time was they wanted to get a black skier on the World Cup or in the Olympics. And that made sense to me because it was like, okay, this is a way to have someone high profile that, because of that profile, breaks down the barriers, is out there in the public eye, is on the TV, is on the wide world of sports. And that mission, as I understand it, continues. But as skiing has evolved, and, you know, this is before extreme skiing and all the, you know, the pro skier culture that has existed for the last 30 years, say, and a little longer, there are other ways to have that high profile presence, even if it's in a small way. And one of the guys I met in Vail, this young man named Bryce Barnes, split boarder. He's got maybe in his mid 20s.
Yeah.
And he's an aspirant guide. He's well on his way to becoming like the first African-American splitboard guide. Tell me about what that could mean. A guide is important. It's not like Olympic level, but it's critical to taking that next step. What does that look like to you? How do you support him? I know he came with you guys to Morocco. Tell me about that cat.
Yeah. So yeah, he is on his way. He's working on his AMGA, American Mountain Guide, you know, Association, to try to get that certification. And I hate to use this term of, you know, he's the first, you know, African American to get that certification, because I don't know that. There may be 2 or 3 who have done it, but I'm sure he's on that track and he's going to be one of the first. So I like this statement: you cannot be what you can't see. You cannot be what you cannot see. So him getting that certification and him being showing up as your guide, and other people of color are seeing that, they're like, wow, wait a minute, he's kicked down that door, or what we thought was a barrier. Well, maybe I can now do that. Maybe I can get into that. So that's what that means. He is a trendsetter. He's blazing a trail, and he is shattering, and he's helping with, you cannot be what you cannot see. So we're looking at him, and all right, let's follow him. And there's going to be more, you know, people of color getting into the backcountry because they're seeing it. They're seeing that it's possible. And also, by the way, just being African American, if they see Bryce as a guide, or myself as, you know, maybe guiding a tour, because of, you know, in the past, hey, those spaces may not have been safe. I'm with Bryce. I'm with Tele Mike. I'm with Carl Terrell. Hey, now these guys are out here. They know what they're doing. Now I feel safe. So that's what that means. It's safety. It's Black excellence. It's breaking barriers. It's Black joy.
I love it. So Mike, at the beginning of the podcast, you talked about your interest in backcountry was really an interest in skiing powder, which we of course have all had. Talk to me a little bit about that joy that transcends that experience, and why it's so important to share with people.
Yeah, man. You're chasing that high. You're chasing that high. I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, I went to Telluride, and my first time, I think my 40th birthday, my family bought me a day of heli skiing. And man, I'm on that first run, jumping out the helicopter, and man, I'm on my brand new Rossignol S7s, man, and I'm just carving turns, and man, you just in love with the mountain, man. And I get down to the bottom, and I take my goggles off, and the guide looks at me and says, man, it just looks like you just smoked a blunt. And I'm like, yeah, man, it's hard. It's hard to describe that experience of skiing powder. It's like, you know, one of the things is people say, oh, you're flying. Yeah. You feels like you're floating on the clouds, man. It just feels so good to you. And it is, I mean, if someone said, "Hey man, do you want to go ski powder or do you want to have sex?" I'd be like, let's go ski powder first. Because I can do the sex later. I'm just being honest. That's what we talk about, right? You know, and then, and so it's selfish. So it's, some people try to get that high by actually, maybe doing drugs or actually drinking, but you don't have, you can get to that same place and have that high by skiing powder. So I was like, man, again, I'm getting nourishment from this. It's helping my dopamine levels. Let me go show this to my brothers and sisters. So I was taking them out, so that's why, Carl and I were like, all right, we got snowmobiles. I know people don't like to hike. Let's get them out on snowmobiles because, they're at Vail Pass, Vail Ski Resort in the back bowls, and they're skiing 6 inches of powder. And I'm like, nah, man, let me take you to a place where it's going to be 2 feet, fresh powder, uncut P-Funk. And man, we just going to get after it. And then when you bring your brothers and sisters back there and then they get it and you see them, people are just hooting and hollering. Some people are crying. Some people, we got the music going, and man, it's just a good time, man. It's something, obviously, I know you get it. I know a lot of people that listening to this podcast are getting it. And I'm just trying to bring it to my culture so that they can experience something that they never knew existed, a high that they never knew that they can even get to. Let's go get this powder. That's my answer, man.
That is a beautiful answer. It just gets me fired up to go out there and get it myself.
Yeah, right on.
Tele Mike Russell, thank you so much for joining me today. It's such a pleasure, and I can't wait to see you this winter.
Absolutely, Howie, man. Let's get after it, brother. Whether it's lift service, skin track, snowmobile, let's go get it. Let's go get this butter, man.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to the Backcountry Podcast and for supporting independent media. The Backcountry Podcast is produced by Backcountry Magazine, an imprint of Height of Land Publications in Jeffersonville, Vermont. Backcountry's small but mighty staff works hard to bring you stories that are beautifully produced, thoughtfully edited, and thoroughly fact-checked. Betsy Monero is our editor-in-chief. Mike Horn is our podcast producer and engineer. Our music was composed by Alex Paul. Please consider supporting independent journalism by subscribing at backcountrymagazine.com. Use code PODCAST for 10% off your entire order. I'm Adam Howard. Thanks for listening. Until next time, we'll see you in the backcountry.